Welcome to episode 6 of, is it 6? It is 6 of Prepared, your TBC weekly breakdown. Welcome, guys. So today we are back, me and Zirene, the duo. We're back. We're going to talk about why TBC hype might be dying. Is TBC hype kind of low right now? We're going to talk Zirene's updated melee comp version 2. Zirene has an entire thesis that he's going to present later, a PhD explanation of his melee comp. We're going to be talking about TBC beta caps increase, add-ons are enabled, we got BGs now, arena skirmishes, a whole bunch of TBC beta news for us to go through right now as well. And then we're going to talk whether they should add raids to beta. I think that's an interesting talk there as well. And Zirene had a talk with a developer about mage boosting, yep. So we're going to talk about that as well. Apparently they may have come up with a solution that they think is serviceable for both sides as far as the solving the mage boost issue goes, because people are not happy about mage boosting right now. Then we're going to talk some other little bits and pieces. So heroics are already beaten at level 68 before they even hit 70. People are beating heroics. They added in new beginner quests for people who take the boosts. There's instance caps. So for people that don't know, instance caps are, I'm not even sure if there is an instance cap on the beta actually. But we'll talk about that as well. And then there's a little bit of speedrun talk, guys. A little bit of speedrun talk. Me and Zirene got to get that in there. Because there was some big speedrun news. NOTA did a new public record, and then Progress did a new private record of 45:37. So there will be speedrun talk. But again, if you guys don't like speedrun talk, there's always timestamps in the description of every podcast on YouTube. You guys can just go skip the podcast section with the speedrun talk if you don't want to listen to that. But yeah, let's get started. Zirene, how are you today?
I'm doing all right, man. How about you?
Okay, just tired apparently for you, huh?
Nah, just a little bit, but I'm waking up, so I'll be all right.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, last night I went onto Zirene's stream just before I was heading to bed, and I see him preparing this entire like PowerPoint thesis with like 5,000 VODs open on his screen, just going through melee comps and things. And to give people the context, I was raiding in Naxx the other night with my guild, and I don't check Discord when I'm raiding because I don't have another screen for my Discord.
Yep.
And I just see later I see this message from Zirene, this week gonna be great, and then like half an hour later it's like I'm revamping my melee composition a bit, and then it just goes on and on from there. He's just been sending me messages about his melee comp for the last like 2 hours. So it should be a good time when we get to that. We'll discuss that at some point in the podcast. So
my favorite controversial topic. So
yeah, it should be good for the comments at least. We got to keep our average of apparently 5 bajillion comments arguing with us in every single podcast comment section. But yeah, so last week we opened with bed talk. No new bed talk this week, guys, unfortunately.
Nope.
Although, what chair are you using, Zirene? Do you like your chair?
No, I hate my chair. It's a DX Racer that I got for free, and that's why they don't sponsor me. So that's why the pillow's always backwards. So
okay. So what you're saying is you don't use a Logitech chair. And that
no,
Logitech
I don't.
It would have an opportunity to sponsor us and give us some sweet shroud chairs.
I don't know. Absolutely, dude. My chair sucks. I don't recommend gaming chairs. They're bad.
Okay. Enough chair talk. You guys got your little bit of bed talk and chair talk this episode. So let's talk about TBC.
Next week, desk talk. But
desk talk. Hey, those are important things. Desk, chair, bed.
Oh no, here
monitor.
We go. Oh my god! All right.
Okay. TBC hype. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but this is something I've noticed, especially talking with other streamers and things like that. I was just hanging with Savix the other night when he was leveling, and he was just talking about how the TBC hype seems kind of low, and then when you're on the beta as well, people compare it to the classic beta, the first time around with classic beta, and where everyone was hyped to be on there, everyone was playing all the time. And meanwhile, with the TBC beta, it's been kind of like the opposite almost. People are hyped at first, and then after a day, they're like, kind of done with that. I have a lot of guildies that have the beta, they're not even logging on. A lot of friends that I know have the beta, they're not really playing it that much here and there. What are your thoughts as far as why the hype isn't kind of matching the original classic hype?
For me, the reason that I'm like, because I have beta, but I don't log on as much. I'm not like super grinding it or anything like that. It's kind of a threefold problem for me. One is not all of my friends are on it. So it's kind of like, I'm not able to play with all the people that I want to play. Uh, the second thing is there's PvP and PvE servers. So like I rolled up on the PvP one, and then Tetsu wanted me to like tank a dungeon for him, and he's on the PvE one. So I had to like make a copy of my 60 character and go over there instead of being like 63 and a half, 64. So I was like, okay, I'm not really ever going to log in that character anymore. But um, the the other thing for it, the last thing for me is there's already a game that people are playing WoW wise right now, and they like. Whereas when the other one came out, it was like BFA, and people are really craving like some type of good WoW, and people were playing, the classic beta. Here, people are like playing classic right now. People are, for me, I have to get world buffs all the time, and I don't even have like the time to play. And it's also DMF week. So, and the next week is going to be DMF week as well, where I'll be raid logged. So it's, for me, I'm not able to really play because I'm already playing WoW kind of thing. Right. And that might be one of the problems with, having a classic era server and TBC is it's kind of already, I think, cannibalizing the audience a tiny bit. But I think a lot of people will come into TBC when it releases, because for like 50% of the people who had come into WoW, Classic wasn't the start, right? Like TBC was the start for them. So I think a lot of people will come back in for that. So I think the hype is dying, but I think when it's looking ready and it's looking better, I think people will once again get excited about it. So
Yeah.
I'm not too scared, but yeah.
Yeah. It's been interesting looking at it because like for me the experience was I got into beta. I was like really excited for the first like a couple hours or something around that, and then after that I was just grinding, and then I was realizing, man, be great if I had some friends around here, but there's no one around here. Yeah. Meanwhile, my only friends are apes running past already at max level, ganking me a few times, and that was my early beta experience. And I don't know if this is how it is for other people, but because I heavily mod my UI, there's certain elements of my UI that I'm just super used to using. When I hopped on without any UI elements at all, it was hard to adjust. It almost felt like something was missing from my screen the whole time. Just when I was questing and such, it just felt like things weren't there. It felt like a completely different experience. And there's just a general lack of people. For people that don't know, I've been grinding pretty reasonably. I haven't gone full no life on the beta, but I've been grinding reasonably. I'll hit 70 later today after the podcast and such. So I've been working my way through the beta, and the questing experience has been it's been very chill but very lacking in people. So the way everyone who isn't doing dungeon grinds is that you're just going through the quest experience, and you skip any group quests because you know that you're not going to be able to do them because there's no one doing actual group quests. The only group quests are the people doing dungeons. So if you want to actually group with people, you have to go join the people who are just spamming dungeons. And talking to my friends who are in the beta, who aren't playing, they just said that, yeah, I don't want to... Because everyone knows the meta for TBC, which is going to be you log in, you're going to do 4 different instances all the way up to 70, and that's basically your grinding experience to 70. And they don't want to burn out on that now. Rather, they're scared that if they play beta, they're going to not want to do that again the second time. So that's been why I've seen a lot of people not doing it. And
yeah. I completely echo that. Like, I actually spend more of my time theory crafting, and like I'm going to start making BIS lists for every class to kind of like, or pre-BIS lists to kind of see like what I should be going after or what other people should be going after. And maybe they won't be the perfect ones, but I'm going to adjust them over time. So that's like kind of my next project is what I want to do on stream is that, because I'm more interested in researching the game than grinding the dungeons and finding the most optimal way to do that, because I'm not interested in like, I know some people are, they're interested in like getting like Kara first or something like that. Right. But that's not something that like really interests me. I'm more interested in like the refinement or the optimization of things that have to do with gear or planning or rotation. So that, or even composition. So that for me, like I said, when I first was on here about TBC beta, was like, I wasn't really going to play it, and I got it and I played it. And then I kind of phased out of it because like you said, I don't want to burn out. Like, I know I'm going to be running those dungeons, and they're short. They are
very repetitive. Yeah.
Very, very repetitive, very grindy. So yeah, I don't want to burn out on that. And that's one of the fears for sure for me.
I mean, it's even just the friend experience in the dungeons is almost kind of like missing. Like I ran, I think when I was grouping with Savix, we ran the same dungeon maybe two, 3 times, and then after that, it was really hard for us to be like, yeah, let's go do this again, guys, in the beta, and it
Hmm.
made it definitely made it more fun though having friends there, but like most of my friends aren't there half the time. It's rough to grind solo without your friends. Like what makes the dungeon grind experience tolerable for me is when I'm there with my friends, and I at least can talk with them, hang out, do our thing. But doing it with just complete strangers half the time is really changes the dynamic. You're just kind of sitting there doing nothing over and over
Yeah.
again.
No, 100%. It's just like mindless grinding. But then again, like that's what classic WoW questing was for me back in the days. This is mindless grinding by myself. So I just think now it's more the repetitive grinding because I don't mind doing quests because at least you're moving forward and you don't repeat the quest over and over again. Whereas the dungeon, you just keep repeating over and over and over again. So
Yeah,
that for
and
me,
as well as that, it's open like this entire area of that I didn't really think about it much before, but nowadays I think about it more because hanging with like the PvP crew coming in, like with Savix and all those guys who are really big PvPers, not really PvEers.
mhm,
It's really opened my eyes to the amount of people who want to play a lot of TBC and will play TBC heavily, but don't care about PvE at all. They're only there for the PvP experience. Like it's a subset of people who just they don't want to do any PvE, and that includes
mhm.
just even leveling, which is interesting. Like we won't get into the whole boosting stuff, but yeah, it's interesting that there's this whole subset of people they want to be level capped for PvP, but they don't want to do any PvE content. They literally just want to log in and do arenas all day, every day, and that's all they want to do.
Yep, yep. That's what I mean, I used to do both as a holy paladin, and that was like the big thing for me in TBC was, instead of raid logging, like all the time you spend raid logging in classic, you do your raids and then you raid log, right? Here in TBC, you do your raids and then you just grind arena literally every day. Like that was the thing that filled all the gaps. And I think back in original classic, I filled the gaps with battlegrounds because you didn't really raid log at all. People didn't get world buffs back then. So this is going to be really interesting to see because I think a lot of people who raid logged will just become, PvEers who PvP because there's only so much PvE you can do. And I think that the way that world buffs are right now on classic, it kind of prevents you from burning out on things an immense amount because I can't play my characters all the time. So I'm not like running Ubers for the 50th time with full Naxx gear helping a friend, right? Like I only get like 1 day a week to even do that because I'm raid logged all the rest of it. So I mean, it's why I have so many different characters, right? So it's really interesting how like raid logging prevents you from burning out on PVE, whereas I'm interested to see what happens in TBC because I think it might become alt city again, but I think people are going to instead just invest in PvP, right? I think that's kind of the thing that's going to happen next, which is good because I actually shared a screenshot of my old arena rating where I was 2200 in twos, and I was like, this was rank one. 2204 was rank one, and that was like barely enough to get your shoulders, right? So I was like, this now 2200 just sounds really low compared to like now. There's people who are like 2900, right? And I think back then in arena you started at 1500, and the more
Yeah.
people you get in the system, the more people that actually play it, the higher the caps can go because there's more people that have like elo or mmr that you can take from, and there's more people that like other people around you can take from the lower people, push them down, and then they get further down, you get further up, etc. So the larger the pool, the larger the cap will go. So more people will have access to shoulders and weapons later in the game if more people play PvP, um, which is interesting because there's also that caveat of in season 1 and 2, shoulders and weapons didn't take a requirement. You didn't have to be
Yeah.
2200 or 1850. So yeah, there's like a lot of things here that I wonder what they're going to do with PvP. If they're going to clamp down on like MMR gains to make sure that people don't go to like 2900 or something and 2200 becomes easy to get. But there's a lot of like PvP questions I have, but not to derail too much. Like I think a lot of people are going to fill the void of raid logging with being able to PvP because they don't have to anymore. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing for the game. But getting to that point, of course, you gotta PvE to some degree to get there. You got to get to 70.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole aspect as well as that. I wonder if the hype might build up more again as we see more people burn out on classic as well. Like right now, like it happened just yesterday. My NA guild decided that they are done with Naxx.
Mhm.
People like apparently the guild leads were getting tells from people constantly saying, "Hey, I want to take a break. Can you find a replacement for me?" And then it got to the point where half the guild was sending them messages saying, "Hey, I want to take a break until TBC. Can you find a replacement?" And they
Mhm.
just said, "Okay, look, half the people don't even want to be here for Naxx anymore.
Yep.
We're just gonna take a break." And overall, I think it's like a really bad decision just because from a guild standpoint, if you take a break, half the people are gone. They're not gonna be back up for TBC. But I can
Well,
understand that.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing because if half the people are gone, you don't have to kick
You
15 people to only bring 25. Like I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's man. We're going through a whole discussion now, but with that, yeah,
Yeah.
it's rough, man. And I've been talking to my chat as well, and they've been saying, yeah, a lot of them are in the same position where they're in guilds where half the people don't want to be there for Naxx anymore. They're kind of sick of it. Like especially when most people are in full bis or almost full bis at this stage.
Mhm.
It's rough motivating people to keep coming back for these when we don't have a firm
Yep.
TBC release date yet. So people
Yep.
don't even have like that thread of hope to hope on. They might be doing this for another 3 months for all they know.
Yeah, it's not like, all right, guys, break. We'll meet back here in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? It's like break. See you at TBC. It might be 3 months away or something, and then you phase out of wanting to play the game at all. So yeah, the there's a lot to kind of unpack there. My guild is at the point now where it's like, you know how like people were doing binding runs, and then eventually it was like,
Yeah.
why are we all going to Molten Core for one
Yeah.
person's, benefit? And so people are like, we're not doing binding runs anymore. And then it's like some people need like DFT, and it's like eventually you're like, we're not doing BWL anymore for one stupid trinket. You can just go make a pug and soft res it or hard res it, right? We just got to the point where we're like, why are we doing AQ for the chance at Goa and badge, and they never drop? So yeah, you guys can just pug it. So we're now like full in on just Naxx in I think all of my guilds. Are now focused just on Naxx. So they're trying to prevent burnout as much as possible, right? Because it is happening. The other problem that's happening right now is some people in some of the guilds that I'm in have already created TBC rosters or tentative rosters with the members in the guild, and other people who aren't in the roster are finding out that they aren't on the roster.
Yeah.
So their motivation to do Naxx drops immensely because they're like, I'm not one of these fucking 25 people. Why would my time is better spent looking for another guild right now, right? And trying to get into a raid team for TBC. So they're like, I'm basically like full bis or close to full bis. Like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. So a lot of people are leaving guilds because they think they won't have a chance at the roster, or the roster doesn't include them already, which is kind of like it's an interesting predicament because you have to make your 25-man roster in some way, shape, or form and not lead people on, but you also want to be able to clear the content still
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
which requires 40 people. So that's I think one of the big challenges that more and more guilds are going to face in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's super rough. Like even for my guild that's now, I told them, I've been talking to some people. I say, guys, if we're gonna take a break, we have to do the roster now because otherwise you're gonna lose people who are like, I don't know if I'm gonna roster. I'm just gonna join a guild now because I need to secure my spot, especially for
Mhm.
melee who are looked down on, which will be this is a good segue to
Hey,
the
I have a great place
yeah, for
to.
melee who are looked down on. Like if you're a rogue or warrior right now, and now you're looking for a TBC guild, have fun because the
Mm,
few spots that are available are very hard to attain, and they're probably already gone in like 90% of guilds. You're not gonna find those spots in a lot of places.
yeah.
So it's rough, man. It's a rough stage. I have some subs on my who come by the stream sometimes, and one of them was looking for a guild. He said he had to transfer to Sulfuris because it was the only place he applied to every single guild he could find. There was the
Is
one
it
guild
rogue?
he could find that had a rogue spot for
Mm, yeah.
TBC because like good luck getting a rogue spot for TBC. It's
Yeah.
super rough.
I mean, it's kind of like right now how there's like a hunter spot, like one hunter spot, and you have to be the puller. So you have to be like a good hunter, and you set the pace and all that stuff. So in TBC, if people are going to take a rogue, you have to be the best rogue that's available to them and deserving of warglaives, because warglaives are more than likely going to rogues for various reasons. And I've actually discussed this a lot on my stream recently about warglaives for who they should go to. And it's very heavily rogues. Like the more I think about it, the more I'm like rogues. Um, I know people are like, oh, Fury Prio, but there's a lot of reasons it should go to rogues over Fury Warriors. So you have to be somebody who's like deserving of that, and joining a new guild, and you don't have like the rapport with them. very hard to get on that list of being the rogue, because the rogue list, basically being the rogue, means you're probably getting warglaives, or you're just being a second rogue that's not going to get warglaives ever. So at that point, I would just make my own guild, just go be a guild leader rogues, and then is the best. That's how you secure your raid spot, right? It's it's you're the equivalent of a classic ret paladin, right? Where if you want to have gear, you raid lead or you be the guild master. Okay, that's the best way to do it. So, except you do a lot more damage. So
I'm curious though. You said what are your new things? Because we did talk about warglaives in I think episode 1. I think we talked about warglaives. What are your new reasons for thinking that rogues should be a little bit more priored on the warglaives front?
Yeah. So I've talked about this enough that I hope my points are more succinct. So the reasons that as a rogue I would want warglaives are the other options that are available to me are Muramasa at the end of the game, and my offhand is like Blade of Savagery. So you have these two weapons that are both swords, because rogues suffer from this thing where they don't have weapon homogenization like warriors do. Because warriors can use fist weapons, maces, swords, axes, whatever. It doesn't matter. Rogues are stuck in sword spec because of the fact that weapon specializations, that sword spec is so good for them compared to fist weapon spec, dagger spec, all that.
So for people that
Mace
don't
spec.
know, I'll just explain. Mutilate is the second option, but it sucks compared to swords.
Yes.
So it's like you're already not the optimal class. You don't want to lose even more DPS by going down into the mutilate tree. So
Yes.
you're pretty much only your sword rogue. If you're late game raiding, you're a sword rogue.
Yeah. So for a rogue, the reason I want a sword is because the sword spec and warglaives, the main hand is 2.8 speed, the offhand is 1.4. Rogues need a fast offhand because of combat potency, and which gives them energy, like proc chance on an offhand hit. And a 1.4 is incredibly fast. And the fact that there's a haste proc on the set with a 450 haste proc is massive, because then that gives you more combat potency procs. Now, why is this significant? Well, because the next thing that a rogue can get, like I said, is Muramasa, Blade of Savagery, which is a really big downgrade compared to the warglaives. So the options that rogues have are, you have like a 10 out of 10 for warglaives, and your next best option is like an 8 or like a 7.8. Now, warriors, the reasons that I would want warglaives are obviously they do a lot of damage. But the reasons that I think you should actually go for other things are threefold. One is you don't want a fast offhand. As a warrior, a 1.4 speed weapon is not very good for whirlwinds. It also absorbs your sweeping strikes very quickly, and you want to have heavy hits with your sweeping strikes to splash those onto other targets. So you don't want to absorb your sweeping strikes. You don't want to absorb or you don't want to have your whirlwind be low in terms of the damage that you do, because it hits with both weapons. And this is one of the first times warriors will encounter this particular problem, is your offhand will always absorb 2 out of your 3 flurries, because it is exactly half the speed of your main hand weapon. So your main hand is 2.8 and your offhand is 1.4. This doesn't really happen right now in Classic, because the fastest offhand is like Julie's Dagger or Alcor Sunraiser, and nobody ever uses that shit because it's 1.3.
Yeah.
So you never run into this problem now. But as a warrior, your flurry, you will actually always have 66% of your flurries go into your offhand, which is not good. So it's a really interesting thing, because you want to have a heavy hitting offhand weapon for whirlwind, for sweeping strikes, all of that. Also, warriors have weapon homogenization where they can use whatever they want. And you have access to haste procs already. Dragon Maw and Dragon Strike are basically your best weapons up until Sunwell or Warglaives or whatever. So you have 2 weapons that have haste procs, and you can dual wield them. They're the maces that you get with blacksmithing. Warriors going to have them at the beginning of the game, and you're just going to keep them until you get to the point where you can upgrade them. Or you get to the end of Sunwell and you use the 2 fist weapons, Mounting Vengeance, and then I think it's like Claw of Manaroth or whatever, the KJ weapon. Those have armor penetration on them, which is a really OP stat for you. So you have an option of a haste option, and you have an option of an armor penetration option at the end of the game with 2 heavy hitting weapons. So for warriors, my personal preference is I actually wouldn't want warglaives as a fury warrior, because I want to have big sweeping strikes damage, and warriors are more of an AoE class. From what I'm seeing on everything, is the sweeping strikes, burst damage, the AoE that they're able to do, and trash packs is more significant than the single target boss damage they're able to do. So for me, that's kind of my reasoning behind it, is you have great options. Like they already have like a 9.5 they have access to with the claws. They have like a 9 out of 9 or 9 out of 10 with the Dragon Strike. So for warriors, I think the difference between getting warglaives and not getting warglaives is really small. And for rogues, it's really significant. So in my opinion, it should go to rogues because they also benefit from it and they don't sacrifice anything like having a slow offhand that goes against what they want. Whereas a warrior, fast offhand isn't exactly what you want as Fury. So that's my warglaives talk.
Oh, I like it.
Without,
I like it. I mean,
without using a lot of time on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that half my audience is rogues is good. This will help our like ratio on YouTube for sure. then when we go into speedrun talk and everything else, it'll go back down again. But it's okay. At least we offset it a bit this week. But for people saying that that Zirene's just doomsaying melee comms, do not worry. Do not worry. We have the second topic coming up now. Zirene's PhD analysis of the melee com meta. Are you gonna share your screen? Do you have stuff that you want to share for this? Because I saw you were prepping stuff.
Oh, not really. I was like, I was more or less like just kind of showing like if you want me to like pull up videos and stuff like that of hold on. Okay, I guess I can do that. Man.
Well, Zirene's figuring it out, I'll basically explain. So. Earlier we were talking like when Zirene says there's like one rogue that you're bringing, he's talking more of like a min max in like a speedrun setting as well. Obviously, if we're talking like a casual guild or non-hardcore guild, I think you can bring like 2 rogues. That's fine in a raid as well. You're not gonna doom the raid by bringing a second rogue. I think that's generally fine. And statistically, you should get more than one set of warglaives. So you could get 2 warglaives for 2 rogues if you're not unlucky. There is the chance of that happening. Yeah. Like Jerome's saying in the chat, 1 rogue, okay, 2 rogues, it's still fine. 3 rogues, I probably wouldn't go for 3 or 4 rogues. We're getting a little bit much when your rust is only 25. But So what Zirene's gonna show us now is his analysis of melee comps. So Zirene's take is that warriors aren't as bad as everyone says they are. And this is why he thinks they might be viable. And he has a whole bunch of comps and things that he has prepared to show us, to tell us why he thinks that warriors are not as bad. And he's more, when we're looking at the comps, he's more talking about late stage TBC, not so much the early raids, but once we get into like Black Temple and such, is when we're talking about this meta.
For me, I don't care as much about the early parts of the game because for me, it's Kara, Magtheridin, and Gruul. Like Kara, you're going to be able to pug that. It's 10-man. Gruul and Magtheridin, 25-man. They're basically just bosses. When you get into Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep, that's when the game starts to like pick up a little bit more. But for me, it's the equivalent of like, this is personal preference, right? I'm just saying this is what I care about. I didn't really care too much about like Molten Core speed running. BWL speedrunnings where it's like, okay, maybe this is where like I'm really more interested in this. And then AQ Naxx, and like Naxx is the one I really care about. Whereas for already going into TBC, I care about Sunwell and I care about Black Temple because those are my favorite instances, right? So those are the ones that I'm more focused on when I look at these compositions. So I'm going to share my screen and do this. So this is the composition that if you're running 6 healers, you'll use. There's a variation of it where you'll use 5 healers if you only need to use 5. So this composition, what I've like kind of come to realize is the amount that hunters do. These are flexible spots. If hunters end up being just overwhelmingly like better single target damage, you're going to be putting hunters into these spots, and your warriors will become your hunter support. Almost like there's a version of this that I'm coming up with that's a Shadow Cleave composition that relies on warlocks for AoE and single target damage, mages for cleanup that will finish off AoE packs while warlocks move forward and life tap, and then the mages blink to catch up. And the resto druids would be the part that holds that up by putting hots on the warlocks as they move because they don't have to stop and cast. And then shadow priests are the mana batteries for the mages. So that's a different composition that I'll talk about later when I make my shadow cleave one. But I think there's 2 viable compositions that are going to come out. And the reason that I think stacking is important here is because I talked to Snow about this. If you guys have ever played like Divinity Original Sin 2, there's HP bars, there's armor, and then there's magic armor. And the way it worked is you can't get to the HP unless you go through whichever one your damage is the type of. So if I'm a warrior and I hit something that has 10 armor for 15 damage, I do all 10 armor and then I do 5 damage to the HP. And then if somebody comes up afterwards, so the warrior hit the HP, if a mage comes up afterwards and throws a fireball, he doesn't go directly to the HP. He has to go through the magic armor first. So people were like, oh, this is going to create a great dynamic where this you go, oh, this mob only has like 12 armor and it has like 50 magic armor. I'm going to put my melee guys on that one because they'll get to the HP faster. But what it ended up doing is it ended up with fights where you have like a poor little warrior chipping away at 300 armor by himself, and then you have like 3 mages who have already gotten through all of the magic armor actually doing damage. So it ended up being in Divinity, in order to optimize, you really want to stack damage so that everybody's doing damage to the same type of thing. So I've seen these compositions that are like, oh, you're going to need a Shadow Priest for the 5% spell damage. Oh, you're going to need a Warlock for, Affliction and all that type of thing. So in my mind, I'm like, why would you bring, for example, like if you guys have a Shadow composition, right? Why would you bring an Arms Warrior that does 4% more physical damage for the 5 physical damage dealers in your raid? Why don't you just bring another Warlock that's going to do his DPS plus more that he would have made up for the 4% the 5 melees are going to do, right? It's the same thing that like right now in Reign, we only run 1 Warlock, 4 mages. So we've actually cut a Warlock and a Mage from our roster to introduce 2 Warriors because we did the math, and Curse of Elements isn't actually worth as much as adding another Warrior and cutting out a Mage or cutting out a Warlock, right? Because the Warlocks don't do much damage at all. So in terms of like optimization, I think stacking things of the same type is going to be good, because also think about the compositions where you have like 2 warriors, right? Or 3 warriors. Who's going to fucking sunder your targets? Their hunters are going to be in a bad place. They're going to be like, you're running into trash and nobody's sundering. Like your main tank is going to be using Devastate, or your off tank's going to be using Devastate. Your arms warrior is going to be hitting it with the Sunder. And that is just miserable for these like 4 or 5 packs with everybody. Like, and a lot of TBC is multi-packs. Like the things are like 5, 6 things in packs. So having more warriors means Sunder gets up faster for your hunters. So I think the composition is going to be your warriors are your AoE damage on trash. Your hunters are your physical damage on bosses. And they do some AoE trash damage as well with multi-shot, etc. But your warriors are primarily your cleave. So, like I said, these spots are a little flexible in group 3, give or take if you're going to use Imp Expose. If you end up needing less AoE and more physical, like single target, you'll use Beast Mastery Hunters. And so that's like, I'm kind of open to that. So these groups are also set up in a way where you have drums will work, or I guess drums will work, right? People are like, oh, put an Enhancement Shaman in the Hunter group. It doesn't work. The AP only works on melee. So the Resto Shaman will be ranged. Drums will affect everybody here. Melee comp, melee, save for the Resto. This is it says Resto, but this is actually a 33-point balance druid for Imp Fairy Fire. And then the rest is in Restoration, because you mostly use Life Bloom. You don't really need the later talents anyway. So this composition, in my mind, is going to be something that moves, does a lot of damage. And people are thinking like, warriors don't do that much. And maybe they're right. They don't do that much on single target fights. That's where the hunters come in, and I'm open to that ratio, right? But I was actually doing more research. I was looking at like a lot of Black Temple stuff. And this is like some hour-long Black Temple clear, right? On the patch that I think we're going to be on. And you look at like different fights. This is like the end of the first boss. It's a little bit of a cleave fight, but you see at the top, there's like a warrior up there, right? 2,400 DPS. And then as you go through like trash and stuff like that, you see like this warrior. He's not, and he's not, like, here's the thing as well. He's not being played to. He doesn't have like people stacked for him. Like he's not like, oh, this composition is like all about me. And this is a fight too. Supremus is not really a melee friendly fight at all, right? Like this is one where it chases people around, and he's still up there in damage. Granted, he's not somebody that's getting like played to and stuff like that, like I was saying. So the idea that people have where warriors are like garbage tier is completely wrong. Warriors are, in my mind, are at least a top 3 DPS class, and their AoE is actually really good. And if you play to them and you stack compositions around them, you're going to have moments like I'm literally clicking randomly in this video, by the way. I don't have like set points. I'm literally clicking randomly in this video. So it's like, you can, I just click from one point to another. The warrior's still top damage, right? So warriors have insane cleave damage with sweeping strikes, and people don't really seem to like care. Literally, this dude right here is up at the top almost every single fucking time. And like I'm going to go to fucking Illidan, right? This is a fight where one of the phases, you literally can't damage him as melee because he's a big old demon and you can't get in melee, right? And the fight ends with him being number 4 and then a rogue and then a hunter, right? He's just behind the warlocks. And I also noticed going into like fights like this, like Illidari Council, that's a different warrior. That's not Shameless. That's the other warrior. So you have all these people who like think that warriors are going to be bad. And I absolutely disagree. And even this right here, like this pack, this is a pack where like you see Seed of Corruption going off all the time, right? Seed of Corruption is just absolutely pumping these things. Well, what happens with warlocks is as soon as a pack thins out and has less than 6 targets, you're actually not as effective as an AoE as if you were to start single targeting at that point. And what you're going to see is warriors. So mages are good against 10 or less targets because of AoE cap. Warlocks are good against 6+ targets in AoE. Warriors are good against 2 to 5 targets. And as packs thin out, you see warriors will start to surge in damage as they pick up again, right? And this is just something that ends up being really consistent here as you watch the damage meters. And packs thin out, this warrior is literally passing all the warlocks, and he's going to end at the top. And that's one warrior. And just imagine if you had more, right? So, and this is a composition that is not made around the warriors at all, right? It's not made around the warriors. I'm sure most of these targets aren't even fucking sundered because they have 3 warriors in the raid. And like the more I look at it, and this is just like some random run. Like I can go look at another run and find almost the same thing. My theory is that what's happening on private servers and the private server data you get from like legacy player. I think there's like a website. A lot of that is the damage that range get to do on bosses that have bad melee mechanics or anything like that, or even just have a lot of HP, exacerbates the issue of warriors are not amazing single target damage, but they can really take advantage of cleave fights. And I think as people become really sweaty and try hard and min max, you're going to see more of what warriors can do in those situations. Now, here, I do want to temper this and say warriors at the start of the game, you're not going to be very good, right? Warriors scale with gear. You're not going to be very good in Kara. Mag Theridin, I would, as they say, fat fucking chance. Gruul, definitely not. And then when you get to like Serpentine Cavern, there's a lot of things that require kiting, a lot of things where Warlocks Hunters will definitely be king. Same thing with Tempest Keep, right? There are some cleave fights in there, but then as you get to Black Temple and Sunwell, armor penetration becomes a stat, expertise becomes way more readily available, and you start to cap off on the things that you really want as a character. You want things to not be able to dodge you, and when you whirlwind with armor penetration, there's all these non-sundered targets that you're hitting, right? And the armor penetration is going to go up in value. You're going to be able to basically spin around with, basically like people don't have to sunder shit. You run straight into a pack, and instead of bloodthirsting or sundering, you whirlwind, then you start sundering. So there's a lot of things here that I think are very important for warriors. And I thought about it as well. So just to like close this all out, yeah. I thought about it as well, where, I'm a tank, right? I'm somebody who likes tanking and main tanking. I've come to terms with, some major copium.
Guys, I did enable the copium emote in the chat if we disagree. Copium is enabled.
So I actually think that I had to take some copium to like, take this in. But I actually think that if warriors do as much, I guess if a feral tank is equal to or greater than the threat of a prot warrior, the feral will become your main tank, even if it's equal threat, because you won't need stacks of sunder in order for devastate to hold aggro, and you won't be using. I mean, it'll be so sorry. If you use Imp Expose, Devastate loses a lot of damage and a decent amount of TPS. I think it's like 4%. It's not massive, but it's still significant. So if threat's not an issue and your tank isn't dying, you're going to use a feral tank because you're going to want Mangle up for the rogue, and you're also going to have Imp Expose armor, which is 500 more armor. And people, like in TBC, people cream themselves over like 160 armor pen on a ring, right? Or 160 armor pen on a weapon. People go insane over it. And so I'm sitting there going, well, if this is true, then people should go insane over 500 armor pen on a boss when your whole composition is physical. So taking those things into account, I think that your Imp Expose armor, you will have a rogue, it'll be Imp Expose armor, and your Feral Druid will become your main tank. And that means that your Prot Warrior potentially just becomes another Fury Warrior, or your Arms Warrior becomes your off tank, and they swap between, right? So I think you may end up with a dynamic where Feral is main tank, off tank is either your Prot Paladin or it's an Arms Warrior off spec who just puts his gear on, and you free up another spot for a DPS, kind of like right now how off tanks are in Pale spec, right? I think it's kind of be like that. So you're going to have a flexible warrior that swaps gear in and out. So I think up until Black Temple, you'll probably have a Prot Warrior tank for progression. And then I think you might change to Feral. And Feral's a weird beast because they don't have a lot of defense on their gear. At all. Like their set bonuses have like no defense. They're just basically big, beefy stat balls. and they get a talent that reduces the chance they get crit by 3%. And then you actually get your PvP set and stack some resilience to reduce the chance that you're crit. So instead of getting defense as a druid, you stack HP and armor, which reduces the amount of damage you take from crushing blows, from crits, and the amount of HP you have to absorb those things. And then you get resilience, which lowers the chance that you are crit, and it reduces the amount of damage the crit does. So you kind of double down on that by using a PvP set in PvE. And I actually think they become suitable tanks in nothing that's like killable. Like, there are some fights where you do have to use a warrior like Reliquary of Souls and Illidan for shield block and spell reflect. But outside of that, I think the druid will lead the charge of the melee compositions. And so ultimately, I think a physical cleave composition is what I think is going to be meta, or at least the second best composition behind a shadow cleave, if shadow cleave ends up being the thing. But yeah, so that's basically where I'm at right now with all of this. Is I've revamped it a little bit, introduced a little more hunters to kind of just, because I think it's undeniable that hunters are really good single target damage. And here's my last point on this. Like, a very final point. Very final point, right? This composition is super fucking easy to gear and get rolling because literally every fucking warrior just uses double Dragon Maw mace. So you aren't fighting over weapons and trying to gear people, right? You're just everybody has BIS weapons coming into Black Temple, right? Everybody has basically BIS weapons or second BIS, and you don't have to like fight over that shit. So it's very easy to gear up on top of that. And hunters just use their fucking dungeon set because it's got like 600 armor pen on it, and then you use tier 5 or whatever. So yeah. So ultimately, that's what I think about this. I think that there's a way to absolutely make this work, and I think it'll be one of the top compositions that you'll see.
Okay. So to summarize, it's to see if I'm getting all of this correct.
Yes.
So your theory here is that so just to clarify for people, we're talking about speed running here. We're not talking about like semi-hardcore and such, where there's obviously going to be a lot more variability in comps. We're talking solely for speed running.
You can clear this content with the bare minimum of basics of what you need. Like, you need a mage for Illidari Council for spell steal and stuff like that. Like, yeah, as long as you have like one mage, what this composition does, and it's like you have one mage, you meet your requirements of having like a druid, of decurses, shamans. Like, I don't think people. So if you aren't speedrunning, I don't think people should really give a shit about what your composition is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like right now, one of my raids has like 4 hunters, and I'm like, we still clear Naxx. Like, I don't know why people are so like uptight about like the compositions, or like the people that are like in the composition, unless they're speedrunning and trying to make the best time possible. So.
Yeah. Okay. So not speed. We're talking about speedrun comp for this analysis. We're talking about the hypothesis. The hypothesis here is that in your standard, what people are thinking is going to be like the crazy comp with a 5 billion warlocks and such, you're adding a whole bunch of support characters that don't really contribute as much. So when you account for the fact that you're losing DPS from those guys and swapping them out to a full melee cleave comp, you actually can still be competitive because you're making up the damage difference by having like more viable DPS options rather than just supporting cast for the warlock crew, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think the two compositions that I think will be good are a melee or physical damage stat composition using hunters with warriors as the support / AoE, and they're basically supported by shamans at that point. And then when you go to the shadow cleave composition that I'm coming up with, it's primarily warlocks, like a lot of warlocks, with mages that do the AoE cleanup as the warlocks move and life tap. Druids is the primary healers there for the warlocks, and then the shadow priests mono batterying everybody in the raid. So that doesn't have access to like life tap, right? So that's the other composition. But that's the thing, is I think that people who have like, I've seen compositions where people are like, you're going to want to bring one boomkin, you're going to want to bring an affliction warlock, you're going to want to bring an arms warrior for the 4% physical damage, you're going to want to bring like an enhancement shaman for this group, you're going to want to bring like an elemental shaman for this group. I'm sitting there going like, why do I need an elemental shaman that's not going to benefit from the 4% like that I'm getting from the arms warrior, or like all these other things? Like, why are you mixing and matching so many different debuffs when all you need to do is bring half of those debuffs, the ones that are relevant to the type of damage you want to do to bosses, and then just stacking the rest of the composition with the classes that are going to make use of those debuffs, instead of doubling your debuffs and being like, now I have half the number of people with twice as many debuffs that are actually benefiting from those debuffs. right? That for me, that's the thing where I see your composition, it has an arms warrior, and I'm like, why is there even this guy in here? Why isn't he just another warlock? Why isn't he just another feral druid, right? Why isn't just like a boomkin or something? Like, what is he bringing? And you're like, 4% physical damage. We want every debuff possible. And I'm like, why? 4% physical damage for your tank, your feral druid, your one rogue, and the fury warrior. Like, why don't you just bring another warlock who's going to use the shadow priest, the affliction warlocks, and like the extra spell damage that he's going to get from like all the other shit that you have in the raid? Like, what's going on here? So I think people are like really hyped about, we can stack all these things and make you feel like you have world buffs again, and you'll have world buffs again, and you will too. It's like it it feels really off to me if you're trying to optimize, because you should just focus on one or the other. And that's what I think is it's going to have, because this might actually make split raids where like all the casters go to one and all the melee go to the other, and everybody has a home at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, especially from a speedrun perspective. Someone in the chat's talking about how it might be interesting if you see like one guild's running physical stack, another guild's running caster stack. It might actually make things interesting. Like I was saying before, like, yeah, it gets a little bit boring sometimes with speedruns where everything's the same every single time. But if we have some variability there, where you could even see like, oh, okay, for this fight, this guild decided, oh, we're gonna shave 1 minute off by running our melee comp here or the caster comp here. It is interesting possibilities.
And I think that BC is going to end up with two very different things than Classic, because speedrunning in BC is not really a thing. But there's two things that I really want people to kind of think about here. Is one, I don't think the same composition is going to be good in every raid, because right now it's like, you got your speedrun composition with the one warlock, 4 mages. Well, add another warlock in, take one out, take one warrior out, and now you're the best AQ speedrunning composition, right? It's like, perfect, you did it. Oh, Molten Core, same thing. It's like every single tier, it was exactly the same composition all the way through. But I think that they introduced enough different boss mechanics that you can gain time or lose time based on your composition in different places of the same instance. So I think some people will sacrifice going slower on one boss to go faster at a different portion, and you'll see kill times will not be completely indicative of, oh, we're killing the instance the fastest way possible. So I think it's really interesting, but it also means that people, like, one of the things that like Progress hiding their speedruns is they don't want to be copied right now, right? Whereas I think in the future, that's almost nobody will want to do that, because even if I show you my melee stat composition, your ass is using a fucking bunch of warlocks and shadow priests. How are you going to copy me, right? You're going to have to reroll all your characters and gear them up, even between weeks, right? Like right now, NOTA just did their run and showed that they started at a Nubercon by using invis pots and shit, right? And like actually just starting their run there. And I was like, oh, we can just copy that, right? And it's like 5 days later, oh, we're doing it. But here I'm like, if you guys are running like different classes than us, I'm going to go, shit, like we don't have that class. We don't have a person that's geared that plays that class that we can sub in. So it'll actually be more interesting in that dynamic where it's not just you did that, I did that. Instead, it's going to be, you're going to need people who can play those classes.
It brings back something really interesting, because this was something Nether brought up when I was talking about whether rogues were viable, like way back at the start when I was talking to Nether. Nether is the rogue class lead for Dream State, one of the horde speedrunning guilds, and he was saying how he really disagrees with people who just write off entire classes, because you might need a class down the line. So gearing them up in like a second raid, your third raid comp, is still a good idea, because you might want to be able to swap them in at some point. And thinking about how sweaty things get, because when I think about my progress guildies, I think like, oh no, these guys are they're all gonna be running like, oh, okay, they're gonna see this and they go, okay, let's just to be safe, everyone get a warlock out, everyone get the warrior out, you're gonna have people who are super sweaty take this to the crazy level where they're gonna have outs geared up for every composition, and just have that flexibility.
One of the best warrior players that I ever played with went and like left Classic for retail, and then I saw him like a few weeks later because he went to go join like a really good guild, and they had him re-roll Boomkin, and he hated his life because they were just like this is the best class and we need more range DPS and there's no melee slots available, and he's been playing melee, but like even though he's a really good melee, the Boomkins just do more damage than him. So it's just like he should re-roll. It's a safer class. There's no punishing like mechanics there. But if after Castle Nathria, the next raid has like things that punish Boomkins, or you like have to move more or whatever, and you can't hard cast or anything like that, it's like, oh, well, maybe he has to go back to his melee character. So I strongly believe that your composition will not be static between every single raid. I think there's going to be a decent amount of variance, and I think that multiple compositions will come up that are completely viable, right?
Yeah. And
So
someone in chat brought up the thing about private servers do have more like haste stacking and things for the warriors and such. But I think the point of all of this is that even if the private servers warriors are a little bit better than they seem because the haste is stacking and things like that, even if you take those factors out, you're seeing that warriors aren't bad. Like even
yeah,
if like they don't perform as good as they did on private servers, you take a little percentage out of that, they're still good. It's not like the warrior is complete trash tier like people are thinking right now.
yeah, but even if without haste stacking, like because people are like, oh, you use Dragon Maw or whatever right now. Armor penetration, people are going to be more keen to armor penetration. Who is it? My guild has made a few ripples recently with like TBC experiments. There's a clip of Draven who has ED and Badge of the Swarm Guard, like doing like 5,000 DPS for like a consistent pull back to back on like at a pretty low level, and because he's just pumping, right, and he's just using whatever he can with sweeping strikes and all of that. And he's not like the best geared, but he does have Empyrean Demolisher, which is basically the proc that you'll be having with Dragon Maw and Dragon Strike. So yeah, you benefit immensely from haste, and I believe I believe haste is a little bit different because it's going to be haste stacks not multiplicatively, but it stacks additively, whereas attack speed stacks multiplicatively. Kind of like, you know, how Slice and Dice and Blade Flurry, if you've listened to anything Snow said about attack speed, Slice and Dice and Blade Flurry stack multiplicatively, right? Where
Yeah.
it's not 50% increased attack speed, it's like, what, 56, 50 something? Because you gain 20% of 130% attack speed. So it's interesting, but haste just stacks additively.
Yeah, haste
So.
haste is an interesting one as well because even in the beta right now, everyone's testing all the haste things, and we're finding things like right now a lot of rogues were thinking about rushing early blacksmithing for the mace, but now we're finding out that potentially that mace haste stack doesn't stack with haste potions from the proc from the mace. So now a lot of rogues are reconsidering. Oh no, wait, maybe I shouldn't go mace early with the blacksmith thing because everyone's gonna be chugging haste pots all the time.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in that department. Like, I'm really interested in the cost benefit analysis of maces, because there's the mace from like Kael'thas as well that has an energy proc on it. And I'm like, is that worth taking and having like a Dragon Maw offhand or like a faster offhand, right? But yeah, so the haste stacks are not stacking right now, and people are back and forth on whether that's supposed to be a thing or not. Yeah, I'm not sure if Blizzard has come out and said anything about it, because I'm like, I'm not sure what they what the solution is, if they're just going to leave it like that. Because I'm like, does that mean Dragon Spine Trophy doesn't stack with other things, or is it just weapon procs and the haste proc from like, or the haste thing from potion? So it'll be interesting because haste potions are a world drop as well. Those things are going to be expensive. So if I don't have to buy those, I mean, I'm a little happy. But yeah,
I mean, does it worry you a bit about the whole haste pot thing? Because I feel like everyone was going into TBC thinking, yeah, no more consumables, no more raid buffs, and now everyone's looking at it like, haste pots. Wait, haste pots are a
yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, haste spots like scare the shit out of me. Like, I'm sitting there going, I'm actually gonna get all of these. Like, I'm just gonna actually buy all of this, and it's gonna be a big problem. So not looking forward to that. Not looking forward to that at all.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean that's Zirene's comp. Leave comments in the chat if you believe or you don't believe. We will see the like ratio on this video and how many people will be yelling at Zirene this week. But I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to have like one thing I really value about having Zirene here is that he will be open-minded about stuff. Even if he doesn't agree with it, he'll at least listen to the points and then make up his conclusion. I think what the problem and why people think like warriors are just bad or and such is that a lot of people just kind of listen to they made up the conclusion and then they've gone backwards to find the evidence to support it, versus just looking at all the evidence and then making your conclusion, which is I think is a better way to look at things sometimes.
Yeah. For me, it's like playing warrior and like seeing all of the things, because like I was talking about this even before, where I was like, just being in a speedrunning guild and like playing around with different classes. I'm like, something would have to immensely change about warlocks or hunters, to the point where I'm like, okay, their damage is better than being able to move with mobs, which you do in speedrunning, right? Because even just saving time by walking with mobs is a lot. So I think that people kind of undervalue that and don't really realize that those seconds add up over the course of an hour or 45 minutes of your progress. So being able to constantly move is huge. So
Yeah. I mean, like, people really don't understand how much time gets lost just in moving constantly on a speedrun. For people that don't speedrun, it literally, there's some pools and things where you just lose, you might end up losing a minute on your overall time if you stop and wait for people to cast and then run in. Like, a lot of the times you just gotta run straight in there and go for it, because if you're losing like 5 seconds to cast every time, or a couple seconds here and there, it adds up. It's one thing you'll notice on speedruns, for example, on the pre-patchwork in Naxx right now. There's two ways you can kind of do. You can kind of run straight into them and keep them pulling, or you can precast. A lot of like the more semi-hardcore casuals, they'll like precasting on the trash before patchwork, and just to make sure you kill them quicker and such, so you don't have to deal with lightning totems and such. But in a speedrun, sometimes you just want to run straight into them, and you don't want to waste the time precasting and all that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that where I was even watching like the NOTA run where I watched it from
Okay, wait. Before we get into that, we're going to go into speedrun talk now, guys. So there are more TBC topics. If you want to skip speedrun talk, use the timestamps in the description. You can skip past this little segment. So, okay, let's go. Speedrun talk.
Nice. No, I was watching like the NOTA run from Anderson's perspective, and there's also another perspective. I think it was
Mage, I think. Did you see the mage one?
I think it was Mackey's perspective. I don't think I saw the mage one, but I noticed like even on Gluth, like they engage it, and Anderson gets there like 8 seconds or 5 seconds after it's already been engaged. Like the Gluth has been pulled halfway through the room before he even gets out of the pipe. So people, they're just running. Like as soon as you get and you're able to, or as soon as you're able to move, like you do. And seeing that type of thing, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know in TBC, like even if the mobs have more HP, you still want to be able to like drag them, even if it's slowly, to the next point. But that's all.
Okay. Well, I mean, while we're on the speedrun topic, we must as well get all the speedrun stuff taken care of. So for people that don't know, there's 2 new times that got put up in the last like DMF period here. So NOTA has like the official open time, which is, do you know what the time is? I think it's like 47. Is it 57? Wait, let me have a look here. Yeah, 47:57 is NOTA's time. So that's the public one. And then because Progress is private logging right now, people have been wanting to stay up to date with what Progress is doing. Progress's current best live time is 45:37. Now, it raises some interesting things, because if you watch the NOTA run, actually I can pull up the NOTA run here. Screen share. So the NOTA run, one thing people are noticing at the start here is they start the run from a Nubricon now. So this is one of the variations for the new strategies, I guess, that you've put in, is that NOTA is starting to run. They invis pot past the beginning into this area, and then they start logging from here. And it's actually not against the rules to do this. People did check on the Warcraft Logs Discord whether this was allowed, and it is. You're allowed to invis pot and then start on the Nubricon, and then go work your way backwards from a Nubricon to the other things. But
yeah,
speaking as far from a speedrun perspective, it feels like NOTA has they have a very clean run, but it's kind of reaching the limits of what you can do with this current meta of strategy. And what are your thoughts, Zirene, as far as that? Because I didn't watch the full thing maybe in as much detail as you did, but from what I've seen, I'm not sure if there's places where they can shave off a huge amount of time to try to breach the gap, that 47-minute gap.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm like, I don't see this being what Progress did, like spot for spot kind of thing, because this just ends up being 2.5 minutes slower, and I don't see 2.5 minutes of time they can shave off unless like Progress literally did what they did, but with better damage, didn't lose anybody at all, and literally had like the best run. GG, it's solved, right? So I don't think that I think that this is like I think this is very close to how solved it can be with this strategy, which means you're going to have to change something, right?
Yeah.
If you want to beat progress, you're going to have to find something else out. Even though this is like a great innovation, um, it's not enough,
Yeah, it's
right?
not like a major thing that's gonna shave off minutes and minutes of your time, basically.
Hmm.
I'm curious what your thoughts are. So for people that don't know, I am in progress on one of my tunes, so I can't leak any like details on things. But I'm curious
Yeah.
to see what Zirene thinks is the what do you think progress is doing that enables them to do a 45-minute ish clear?
I actually don't know. I haven't thought about it too much, like to be completely frank. Um, I was more or less like taking the last week off, and we haven't been PTRing, so it's I think we're mostly sticking with our own strategies right now ourselves, and so I haven't really like um, I they called off the strategy meeting this week, and I'm really sad. So, no, I haven't had much time to like sit and think about it. But all I know is, given what I know about Naxx currently, there's got to be something else that is like game changing. Very similar to like how in AQ people started doing like simultaneous bug trio guardian packs and stuff.
Yeah.
Something along those lines would have to be simultaneous actions. That's how you cover time, is either skips or simultaneous actions where you do things at the same time. And those are your big time saves. And they have a big enough time save that I'm like, there's got to be something else that they're doing. Like, I've racked my brain on like, this pack after the Fairlina pull, the one that's off to the right. I'm like, do you giga pull that after? Like, what do you do? So there, even here in the Nota run, they do this pull, they pull Fairlina, then they do they go past the spider pulls afterwards, and then they have a skip where like the rogue does a thing where he petries, pulls things off the side. They invis pot, they gnomish cloaking device past like a bunch of ghouls and stuff. And sure, that stuff is all time skips and like it saves you time, but I'm just not sure what progress is doing without like me being like it's something that nobody's thought of, and I haven't thought of it or had enough time to really think about it. So it's that they're just good, right? Like they're just better than everybody right now, and
I mean,
that's straight up like
the,
they've got
the
those
interesting thing
big
is,
brains.
yeah, every time my chat brings up a topic, it brings out this big debate here, like, oh no, hiding logs versus showing them publicly and things. But I've always found it really weird. As someone who's super competitive, again, for people that aren't familiar with my stream, I used to be a professional snowboarder. My coaches went to the Olympics
Mhm.
and things like that. When I look at, or like, if I wasn't in progress, because I am in progress on one of my tunes, if I wasn't in progress and I was on the other speedrunning team, I would look at it and be like, yeah, well, bring it, progress. You guys can hide your logs all you want. We're gonna out innovate you, and then we're gonna come in and we're gonna beat you, right?
Mhm.
But I find it weird when people look at this. They're like, oh, progress is hiding logs and things. It's
It's
not.
complaining,
Yeah,
complaining,
it's
right?
really weird for me. For me, I'm thinking like, where's your competitive spirit? Where's your competitive
Mhm.
spirit to think like I'm the better speedrunner? I can beat progress. They can hide logs all they want, and I'm gonna come in there and
Mhm.
still trash them.
Yeah,
I
because all it
yeah.
is copying right now. Like that's all it is. People see what other people do, they copy, they copy, they copy. If you have like a strat that's really going to save you a lot of fucking time, like why would you show it to people? Like if you don't have to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
entire thing, I don't know, the entire thing is weird, but from my perspective at least, but it's kind of interesting in League of Legends. I know Zirene should be familiar with this. There was always those talks about in esports and things, whether esports should mimic sports, whether like
Hmm.
people should cheer for both teams, people should or whether people should be happy or clap and things like that when people are on the stage, and there were always debates when like when two League of Legends teams would would come on for like a world's events or something, and then the crowd would be only cheering for your home team and totally silent for their team, for like the opposing visiting team. And I feel like there's a lot of places where sports does mimic esports and vice versa, and or I guess esports does mimic sports in a lot of ways, and it feels like sometimes people expect esports to behave differently when a lot of times it doesn't really. Like, people start copying down that route, and I feel like it's similar to how it is now with these speedruns, where when I see someone hiding a log or hiding strategies, and I think isn't this normal for sports? Like, isn't this what normally
Hmm.
happens in competition? Like when I was
Yeah.
doing snowboarding, like you wouldn't go up to your competitor and be like, hey man, I got this trick in the bag. This is how you do this trick, and then next competition you can come and also do this trick. No, I'm gonna come to the next competition and be like, yeah, I'm gonna stomp this trick in front of you and show you what's up, and that's it. And I just don't understand the entire thinking where they think like they deserve logs or they should be shared. For me, I just see it as like progress is prepping and getting ready for the final day, and then when the final day comes, they're gonna release the logs and vods, and people are gonna see like, oh yeah, this is how they do it. Cool. At least that's
Hmm.
how it is from my perspective.
Yep. No, I agree. I don't think there's anything like necessarily bad about it. People are salty because they're just like, oh, it was picking up, and the speedrunning community was getting bigger and bigger, and people were excited about these things, and they feel like they're robbed of it. But the community's not really owed anything, and its progress is its progress is
Yeah.
was prerogative. It's their it's their choice. Right? They don't really have to show you anything. Um, they're choosing to be competitors instead of entertainers, and that's a big distinction that I think people blur the lines of. If you're competing, you're there for our entertainment, but they're there to put up the best time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, before we move on from speedrun talk, is there anything else you saw in the NOTA run that was kind of neat that they did?
Um, oh man, it was just the skips of like using the invis pot plus they used two invis pots back to back, the Fairlina Gigapole into the skip. They used a gnomish cloaking device there with nifties. They pulled the A bombs into the Plague Wing when they were doing that. And beyond that, I believe it's all really standard. So uh, I didn't see anything else that really stood out to me. I don't think they did anything innovative beyond that. So,
Yeah. So, I mean,
yeah.
that's not to take any credit away from NOTA. I think it was a very clean run. I think
Yeah.
it was a great run with the current strategy. It's just that we're kind of reaching the points where that's what you can do with the strategy. You need to we need to wait for another big innovation if they're gonna improve the time, which is kind of like what Progress is doing right now.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's speedrun talk, guys. Again, we're back. So everyone that has skipped past this in the timestamps, welcome back. Speedrun talk is over.
Welcome.
um, so Zirene was actually when we were talking topics for this week's podcast, he said he was talking to a developer
Mhm.
regarding mage boosting. It's funny that that happened to you as well because I had some game developers reach out to me as well to discuss some other bits and pieces. I think we have a few that seem to watch the podcast. And so Zirene was talking to a game developer, and supposedly between the two of you guys, you found some sort of solution you think
Yeah.
to mage boosting, how you would fix this issue where everyone in classic right now hates that mage boosting is a thing and it kind of ruins parts of the leveling process and etc etc. So
Yeah.
what is your
So
solution?
I don't want to misquote the person. So like the thing that happened was he approached me and we talked about it a bit, and I was actually he helped me kind of express my own idea a little bit more of like I think like not my beef is not with mage boosting, and his is with mage boosting. And what he was saying is he was saying that it because people focus on like it ruins the leveling process for people, it makes it so there's less people in the open world. And he came and said the reason he doesn't like mage boosting is because it's overwhelmingly dominant, and the other options aren't appealing, so it becomes the strategy that everybody wants to go for. And instead of nerfing mage boosting, what we decided was you should just buff questing, right? Because if you nerf mage boosting, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these like unforeseen consequences, like I talked about, right? Where if you nerf mage boosting, people are going to find different ways to do it. It might have something that like messes up the way that regular dungeons work. That if you're partying with your friends in a dungeon, his solutions were one of two things. We agreed that you should probably just boost open world questing, so it's an appealing option for people that they can go like, oh, I'll actually grind out a level here and then I'll go get boosted, or I'll get to this next breakpoint via quests. Because right now, that's just not an appealing option at all, and you'd rather just AFK and boost. Because
Because
even
it's
if mage
crazy
boosting,
XP, yeah. Just to
even it,
clarify for people,
yeah,
mage boosting is crazy good right now, even with the
yeah,
AoE cap. The first person to 70, I believe, on the PvP server was Zyrene's friend in Rain.
yes,
What's his name?
Esquire,
Esquire? Esquire.
Esquire. Yeah, yeah.
Esquire was literally
I
Esquire
actually
was
talked about him
literally
last podcast.
70. Yeah, literally
Yeah.
the first 70 on the PvP server, and all he did was stay in slave pens all the way to 70. He just slave
Yep.
pens to 70, and he did it really, really fast.
Yeah. So Esquire is somebody I actually talked about last time. His stream is the real Esquire. He's got like a really radio voice. He's like a PUBG caster. And he does like boosting, and he's a very big mage booster. He does the Mara 500 pull for boosting, but right now what he's been doing is he's been doing slave pens boost. And you know how like people are like, oh, I hit 70 and now I get to play the game. He hit 70 and he literally just recopied his character at 60, and he's literally gone from 60 to 68 so many times now. He literally just mage boosts all day, every day with new characters. He just keeps making the same 60 mage and just doing the boost and timing it. So he's now like doing a 60 to 70, like trying to get world record fast as possible already. So he lives in slave pens, right? He lives in slave pens. He doesn't give a damn about your AoE cap, nothing like that. But yeah, so we were talking about I was talking with the developer about like what the solutions are, and we both came to the conclusion that like mage boosting is just it's too good compared to other options. Like it's too good in general, but nerfing mage boosting may have unforeseen consequences. And what you should do instead is just make other appealing options that are almost as appealing as mage boosting, so it's not the overwhelmingly dominant thing. Because even if you nerfed the like this is the thing is we talked about it and we were like, even if you nerfed the experience that you get from a mage boosting you in half, I would still get mage boosted because I get to AFK, right?
Yeah.
Like I would still pay so that I can do work or research on my other monitor while I get boosted, or play on another character in a different window. I would still pay and get boosted even if the experience was half as good. So nerfing mage boosting, the convenience of it is not really the option that people should go for. You should instead buff questing so that you end up with people who are questing out in the open world, who find it an appealing option. People who don't have money feel like they can get through the levels easier. And then there was one more thing that had actually good, or what was it? It was let me see if I can find this, because he the other solution that he had was, in instances, you should tie the majority of the experience to the bosses instead, which I thought was a really interesting take.
To the bosses.
Yeah.
Interesting. That is interesting. So yeah, you have to kill the bosses to get the majority of it XP then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was like, if you take the experience out of the mobs in dungeons and put all of it into the bosses, it means you got to kill the bosses. And I was like, shit, like that's not a bad solution, but it may make groups that like just
they
may make
just speed run to the bosses instead.
Yeah, it's literally going to make the all druid like Botanica group at 68 that just goes to the bosses with stealth, right? Like it's that type of thing. I'm like, so it would just make stealth boosting, right?
Ooh,
but
wait,
I don't know
stealth boosting rogues? Okay, I support this. Let's go stealth boost meta. Yeah, let's go.
Oh no, but it's like one of those things where there's all these elegant solutions that sound really good, but then you have to like stop and think about them, and then like think about them again, and then think about them again, because you're just like, oh, that sounds really good. This sounds awesome, and then you're like, but So there's all these things that may just come up, and I'm like really curious, because for me, the mage boosting problem just seems like too big of a thing to tackle. And I've kind of like, given into it. That's like the whole thing where people think I'm like really like pro boost. I'm not like pro boost. I'm more like, I'm just going to roll over and accept it because I think it's too hard of a problem to solve and it's not worth the time. In a perfect world, I wouldn't want the boost to exist, right? But I think that it's something that you kind of have to accept because of just how good it is. Even if you nerf it, people are still going to do it. It's convenient, all that shit. It's like the drum option, right? Where it's like, we nerf drums so that people won't use them. It's like, no, you just made them more annoying, but people will still use them because they're min-maxing. So people will still use mages even with the AoE cap. Even if you nerfed it in some way, shape, or form, people would still find a way to use it. So I'm kind of at like, I've rolled over and accepted it. I feel helpless in front of the mage boost to the point where I'm just like, might as well embrace it. And if it means that like questing gets boosted, then I'm actually like more in favor of that, because I want that option. Because I can't tell you how bad, like in original classic, it sucked to like finish the quests in a zone and then like not be ready for the next zone yet, like there's not a lot of like quest density in classic. Then it kept you moving from place to place, and then like you get one level in one place and then you go to this other place, get a level there, then you go back to the place you just came from because now new quests are available, but it didn't have enough quests to bridge that gap. So there's like a lot of things that I was like, I'd rather be able to just kind of have streamlined questing in general. I know they nerfed the amount of experience it takes to get to 60, but it's just one of those things where I was like, it actually sounded like really appealing, because that's one of my biggest beefs with having alts was the leveling process, right? That's why like the boost was so appealing to me to get to like 58, because the leveling process for me is just not appealing at all. Like I'd rather get boosted, or I'd rather pay for a boost. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, this kind of goes into the next thing, one of the topics on our list, which was I don't know if people saw, there was a very popular Reddit thread, because on the classic WoW Reddit right now, usually I use Reddit kind of as just a gauge of what is the community talking about a lot. I think like sometimes discussions aren't great on Reddit because it can become an echo chamber where people just upvote the opinion that they agree with, and it's hard to get back and forth discussion. But Reddit is very good for just finding things that people are talking about at the time. And there was a post on Reddit, so I'll pull it up actually. That was very, very popular, and it is this one. So this post, it's not them, it's us. It's something that me and Zirene, and we've all both touched on it in points here and there, where basically people want the classic WoW experience, but they're forgetting that the player has changed. You can't go back to classic, and even though it could be exactly the way it was back in the old day, perfect representation of everything in classic, but people are gonna play the game differently. People don't play classic the same way they played classic the first time around. And this entire post is just talking about how you basically can't, you can hope for that to come back, but you can't really ever go back and get the perfect first time MMO, first time WoW experience again. There's always going to be differences in how you experience it. And no matter how you want to change the game to try to match that, players don't play that way anymore. They're going to be that min-max sweaty player half the time. And it's hard to change that.
We've had this discussion like a few times, right? Where I was like, it's not them, it's us. We're the problem. we're the guys who like it's because of us. Like MMORPGs, it's the players that make the game, right? That's the thing, is it's the players, and we're the reason that people get world buffs and shit like that, because they were always in the game, right? They were always in the game.
Yeah, I mean the entire meta changing is interesting, because I think people forget that there's this thing called like a knowledge gap. So when I used to snowboard, I also have a coaching certificate, so I can coach people to do like backflips and things like that. And one of the hardest parts about going back and teaching beginners or teaching other people is that there's a knowledge gap in your head, and once that knowledge is in your head, you actually have to scale down what you're doing, because you're doing so many things that you don't even know you're doing, right? Like if I try to teach like Zirene, I bring him to the snowboard hill and ask him, this is how you do a backflip, Zirene, and I just like do a backflip, he's just gonna look at me and like, I can't do that. What do you mean you just lean backwards and the backflip happens, right? There's this knowledge gap, and it's the same in classic WoW, where people want to go back and they want to experience that again, but the knowledge is already in our heads. We can't eliminate the knowledge of world buffs, the knowledge of how do we min-max this, the knowledge that we shouldn't play Night Elf, Seal Fate, Dagger, Rose without ACLGs, like me and Zirene may have done it at one point in time.
Sad, bro. Big sad.
Yeah. You can't eliminate that. And it's like the player base has to... I feel like there's nothing they can really do about that. You just kind of have to accept that you're going to get the classic-ish experience, but never the full classic experience again. You're never going to get that ideal thing that people have in their heads.
Yeah, you can't. Like it's impossible, because we're different, right? There's more access to information. People theory craft more. People take games more seriously. And overall, it's just like people share knowledge a lot more readily.
Oh yeah.
And you know how you were saying that you would be like, oh, just backflip kind of thing. It's really interesting, because I've actually had this conversation very recently on my stream. Was there's like a chart where it's like there's 4 boxes, and the top is conscious and unconscious, and then the other one is competent and incompetent. So there's 4 kind of variations of that combination, where it's like, if you are consciously incompetent, it means you're aware that you don't know how to do something, right? If you are unconsciously incompetent, it means you don't realize how bad you are, right? You don't know that you're bad at something. Everybody's known a warrior like this in their guild that thinks they're good damage and they're not, and they can't figure it out. So they're unconsciously incompetent. And then there's then there's unconsciously competent. Those are the people who are good but don't know what makes them good, right? They're the people who can't explain it to you.
This is a
And the
lot
people who
of pros in
yeah, the
a
people
lot of areas.
oh yeah, the unconsciously competent people are the ones who are like, "Oh yeah, just Lee Sin cue him here. You know, go." And you're like, "How did you know that I could like kill him?" And they're like, you just could, right? They're unconsciously competent. They can't tell you it. But the consciously competent people are the people who are good, know that they're good, and can tell you what makes them good. And those are people who, like, when they make guides and stuff like that, those are the people you really want to listen to because they'll be able to deep dive into things and get it in a way that's digestible for you, right? And it, it's something where like that's probably the best compliment I ever got was somebody who said I was consciously competent, and then that's like where the whole discussion came from. And he was like, "Yeah, you really like articulate and kind of try to get people to understand why you think like something is good or why you are good at something." And so like being aware of what makes you good. There's a lot of people out there now, and that's why I think the knowledge gap is like less. There's less of a knowledge gap and there's more readily accessible information because I think people have become one more competent over the years and more conscious of their competence, and then that allows them to explain it to other people. So uh, it's really interesting,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I
it's
mean
just a
that
phenomenon
whole
I love.
area is fascinating because I mean I've done this twice now where I mean that's the entire reason I started Roguecraft or the website in the first place, Classic Roguecraft, is because I was like, there's a lot of good players, but man, they suck at explaining this stuff.
Telling you, dude. Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
it's the same when I went back to the. We actually had this problem in the snowboard community as well, where like the big guys would hire these top pros, and then they come on and be like, "Yeah, you just do this 360, you lean this way, and then that's how the 360 happens." I mean, like, you're just sitting there going, I don't know what you just said. Like,
Dude, it's have you ever seen the meme where it's like draw circles and then draw the rest of the fucking owl? Have you ever seen that? Have you seen that meme?
yeah,
It's
how to draw out.
every
Yeah.
drawing lesson I've ever had, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the knowledge gap, right? Is that there's a lot of people that are really good at stuff, but they might not necessarily understand how to explain to get from step one to step two a lot of the times. And yeah,
Oh god.
it's fascinating, man. I mean, this entire industry is like, I mean, you work for pro guides and such. This entire industry is
Yeah.
just about just trying to make the information more accessible.
Like what about Zoidberg says like every math class. Yeah, that's why you got to show your work, you know, just in case. Keep slice and dice up, get 99 logs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just do it. Just do it, forehead. Oh man.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, but yeah, and moving on to more TBC stuff while we're at it. Did you see that all the heroics were beaten, Zirene?
I
Not
I
all, but like a big
yeah.
portion of them were like beaten. And I feel like people are coming into this. So on the beta, people basically hit 68 and started doing heroics because the people at the forefront didn't really have anything to do while waiting for other stuff to open. So they started doing heroics and beating heroics. Apes did some heroics, and then there were some people on Reddit posting they did heroics as well, and they were
Mhm.
beating them. And I feel like there's this expectation that heroics should be impossible to do and such, but that's not really how they were. They're slightly harder dungeons, but they're still perfectly doable. They're not supposed to be this super challenging raid instance type deal.
Mhm. Yeah, and and the gear from heroics will reflect that too, right? Like the thing is like okay, so I guess I'll put it this way: the way the gear curve works in World of Warcraft is if you beat something and it offers you better gear, that's where it's like you're supposed to be pushing, right? It's like that's like if you're in the gym and you're lifting the weight for the PR, right? You're supposed to be once you beat that, you have access to something better and you've progressed. So if you beat like a heroic and it doesn't even offer better gear than your Naxx gear, then you were supposed to be able to beat it already, right? Um, that's how like gear works in at least the classic and early versions of TBC, or at least WoW in general. Is they don't really rely on any skill gaps or anything like that, or like expressions of skill. It's not supposed to be for like just elite players who know how to press like W and like A and D and strafe and shit and get out of like the fire. It's more like there's a lot of gear checks in those early parts. So as long as you know the mechanic or two that the boss has, you should be okay. And yeah, so a lot of the times I think if you're not replacing your gear or it doesn't mean that it's like supposed to be overwhelmingly like a big challenge to you.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It seems like for some reason people thought the heroics were gonna be crazy because maybe are they harder in retail? I haven't done that many in retail, but they're not supposed to
There's
be in TBC.
mythics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel
So
like
like
people were expecting like
heroic.
mythic plus 10 or all that other stuff
Yeah.
from heroics when that's not really what they are. Heroics aren't really this super crazy thing. And I think a lot of people are forgetting that our gear is way better. Our gear is
Mhm.
way better than back in the day. We weren't coming to TBC in full bis like I have two rogues in practically full bis right now. And that would never happen the first time around classic. People were lucky to have like one item of Naxx Ramus. Like they were lucky to come with Aggressor or Kingsfall or something like that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Meanwhile, now like everyone is coming in with Aggressor and Kingsfall. It feels like.
hmm Oh yeah, man. You have so like the gear is just better right now. And there's people who are like already figuring out like how to get expertise cap with like the green gear that's available. There's like leather quest pants, there's leather gloves that are available. So there's like a lot of things that people are already like min-maxing shit and trying to figure out like how they can stat for these dungeons already.
Well, I mean, I feel like people are forgetting how much better people are now as well. Just
Yeah.
in general, if you take the average semi-hardcore guild now and plop them back into old classic, they would destroy things. They're so much better now than they were
Oh
back
yeah.
in the day. But yeah,
Oh man.
it's kind of crazy the gap there. But yeah, I don't feel it's like a big deal. People were saying like, oh, they should make the heroics harder and all this other stuff, but which I wouldn't be against with honestly. That might be interesting to do at some point in a classic plus world. But I don't think it's actually a big deal that the heroics are getting beaten. That they were going to get beaten anyway, and people are really good at min maxing as we've discussed for the past hour.
hmm Yeah, and it's like, what are people really craving? You craving like some kind of like challenge that you can keep throwing yourself at? Because what's the point of making a heroic harder? Are you going to make the gear better too, or are you just going to like what? You gonna what like is it more rewarding, or is it just to go like chest thumpy and be like I did this right, like I cleared the mythic 21, right, that type of thing? Is it just for that? So I'm not sure. I'm In my opinion, that is supposed to be like satiated by arenas and that type of competition. And there isn't really like a PvE solution to that, at least before logs come out, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, while we're talking about the beta changes, there is no, as far as I know, there's no instance cap right now, or I don't know if anyone's reached the instance cap on the beta because people have been. I did see someone tried 50 plus times to see if there was a cap at like 50, but they've gone past 50 instances and there's still no cap. So
Mhm.
this kind of also maybe relates a bit to boosting and some other things as well and dungeon running and such. Do you think there should be an instance cap? Because originally the instance cap was put in classic because they wanted to limit people resetting and like the gold farming things and to limit bots and such among other things. But do you think there should be an instance cap in TBC?
I'm not sure because the fact that I know there's like herb farms and stuff like that that rogues can do, but it's like you can do ZG farms and get herbs like right now anyway. So I don't think the instance cap is like a. I just don't like that it's for the account as well. Like it's kind of like I yeah. Do I think there should be an instance cap? Are people gonna ream me for this opinion too?
Yeah,
um, I don't know. I don't think so. Just let me play the fucking game, kind of thing. Like I'm just like it. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, uh,
yeah. So
going in and farming shit, and then I hit my cap, and I'm just like, great. Like
I mean,
I
right?
get it. I get it. You want to put a bottleneck on the economy. You want to put a bottleneck on like the X, Y, and Z. Okay.
Yeah,
That's,
I mean, right now, the interesting thing, if they brought the cap over from Classic, is that a lot of people have plans to be like, okay, we're going to do this instance a bazillion times until we hit the cap. Then we're going to go do questing. And then we're going to come back when the cap resets. And it's going to be like your dailies, except your dailies quests are to do this instance X amount of times until you hit the cap. Is what people are talking about, which is interesting. I don't know if that's the way I want to play the game. I feel like almost if that's going to be the meta, I just get rid of the instance cap at that point. because it makes the
Yeah.
game really weird. People are playing around this weird instance gap just to min max. But again, it's one of those weird things where do you make the changes based on what the super sweaty people are doing, or do you look at what the general public is doing, or is the general public just going to copy what the super sweaty guys are doing, which is instance cap dungeoning at every
Yeah.
opportunity?
I think the last part, like where it's like the sweaty people will set the trend and then people will try to copy that because they feel like it's the optimal thing. So I think that they do kind of lead the charge on that. But I like how you're getting into the same category as me with like, you've kind of just laid back and accepted it. Mage boosting is going to be a thing. It's like
Yeah.
instance farming is going to be a thing. Might as well just
Oh,
remove
is it
it.
my turn for the YouTube comments to come after me?
No.
Uh,
I mean, but I'm of the same mindset where it's like, just let me play the game. Don't let other people who, I mean, it's kind of like if they limit the number of instances I can enter, sure, it's a limiter, and some people like that. But for me, I'm kind of like, I just don't like not being able to do what I want to do in a game. And I
yeah.
understand that other people are ruining the fun because they are the ones who are, they're the ones who, they're worried about breaking the economy, etc. So I'm more of the opinion of just let me play the game the way I want to play it. I understand that other people are gonna abuse this, but
Yeah,
I
I
just
think it
want to
comes back
play.
to one of those things where
Let them play.
yeah, it's like you want them to solve the issue, but you hate it when the solving the issue makes things worse for everyone. Like, which is
Hmm.
what happened with the original instance caps is they're trying to stop the stupid ZG mage boosters and things by putting instance caps, and people still got around all the boosting things, and it didn't really help. It was almost like one of those typical Blizzard moves where they put in something but it didn't work, and now everyone is suffering still from that change and hoping that things go back maybe. Like kind of like
Hmm.
what we're doing, looking at with leatherworking right now. Well, leatherworking, speaking of that, is in this weird limbo state now, because every stream, without question, I'm gonna get 50 people coming in and saying, "Hey, Snow, what professions are you going?" And I say, "I don't know because I don't know what's going on with leatherworking still. I don't know if Blizzard's gonna be like." Okay, literally everyone hates this leatherworking change. Let's revert it or do something else. But there's this like thing in the back of my head thinking, oh no, what if Blizzard just says, well, we're gonna leave it and see what happens, and then we have to actually raid with this for the next phase.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already planning around it, right? Like, I understand maybe they'll just change it, but like, I've already planned my composition that I want to be running around it. It's like, I don't think it's going to be something that they change
Ooh, you
that.
don't think they're gonna change it?
I don't think they're going to find a way to change it that satisfies people. There's some people who have said, somebody was saying like, God, somebody was trying to, the game developer guy was trying to explain to me his like potential like leather working change thing. I forgot what it was.
I
What
wonder if it's
was
the
it?
same guy that talked to me. Because I had a game developer talk to me about potential leatherworking things, and he was trying to incentivize to make it so that taking leatherworking would give you something else on top of drums, or rather, like everyone had drums, but there was like extra incentive to then take leatherworking on top of that. So one
Hmm.
of his suggestions was make the drums workable without leatherworking, but then if you have leatherworking, there's an extra bonus on top of that. But it's one of those things where I wasn't sure if that would work because people, we know people are sweaty. They're gonna it's as long as there's a benefit to taking it, they're going to take it. Is how it seems to work. But yeah, it is scary because I don't know. It's like I want to tell people, yeah, I'm taking leatherworking or I'm not taking leatherworking, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. We're just kind of in this leatherworking waiting room to see whether Blizzard's actually going to change something there. Yeah, before we close, I wanted to ask, what do you think about the beta adding in raids? Because the way I'm seeing it in beta right now is they increased the level cap now. They're up to 70. They've been slowly adding in bits and pieces here for people to test. Like right now we have BGs, Eye of the Storm. There's Arena Skirmish is in now. Add-ons are enabled. Do you think they should add in raids? Because I'm of the philosophy that I don't think they should add in raids. Or if they're going to add in raids, I hope they do it late or as late as possible so that they can still test them, but not so that it ruins the experience. Because I feel like if they put in raids now, it's going to kill the hype. Like people are gonna go do them, and everyone's gonna watch people do them, and then we're gonna beat it. We're gonna min max it, and then TBC is gonna launch, and everyone's gonna be like, "Well, these guys already did it like 2 months ago."
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's like I don't really want the raids to come out because of that exact reason. Like I still want the hype to be there. Like, I was kind of like, I don't want to play like I don't want to play TBC because I don't want to like ruin it for
Yeah.
myself. But I kind of don't want Kara to come out or Gruul or Magtheridon to come out. But some people are of the opinion of they should. So here's what somebody thinks they're going to do. Somebody thinks they're going to release raids and they're going to they're going to allow you to make level 70 template characters to test the raids.
Ew. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
I don't like it either, but some people are like, yeah, they want to test the full build and shit. And I'm like,
I hope if they do that stuff, they do it internally, or like with like a very select group of people, and then tell them to not release the video or something. Because man, I just don't want to. I feel like the beta, because there's no release date for TBC and such, the beta is almost becoming TBC. As more people get in, it's almost becoming like, oh yeah, this is actually TBC. And if you're not in TBC, tough luck. Because this is where all the ratings happening already. People are already prepping, people are already doing all this other stuff. I don't want it to feel like we're already doing TBC before TBC is even out.
Yeah, that like it'll, like you said, kind of kill the hype. So you think do you think they should take the beta away tomorrow from everyone?
By the way, Blizzard,
like,
thank you for you've done good job in choosing the beta people. Since it's funny, we did that podcast, the first one where I was talking about how I didn't get into beta, and the day after, both me and Tetsu got into the beta. So I don't know if Blizzard were luckily listening or I just got really really lucky, and we got into the beta right after I complained about not being in the beta, and then. This last wave was interesting. They've opened up the beta to a lot more people, which I think is the right idea in some ways, because the beta has felt dead. It's hard to test stuff when you can't get groups and things to test things, and your friends aren't there to test things with you. But at the same time, man, I've got 2 accounts in beta now, which is weird, because the second account I have is literally just my account, which has, I think it has a few chocolate bots that I literally just store chocolates on, Valentine's Day chocolate.
Welcome, chocolate bot.
And I think there might be a level 16 druid that I planned to level and never did, and that's literally all that's on that account. So I'm not really sure what flagged that account for beta, because there's nothing on that besides the level 16 druid and a couple chocolate bucks. That was kind of weird. I feel bad for my guildies who would give their life for a beta key right now, and meanwhile I've got this second account.
Just give him the level 16 druid. It's like a monkey paw. It's like, I want beta. It's like, yeah, but you gotta play it on 16 druid. Oh god. Yeah, this is not what I asked for. No, it's exactly what you asked for. You weren't specific.
But yeah, to close up, I guess, the beta talk. I'm kind of liking what they're slowly doing to the beta. They are fixing stuff with the beta at least, and more people are coming in. So the last wave seems to have like opened the floodgates, at least in my EU guild. Like I think 90% of the guild is probably in the beta now. And then even for my NA guild, we have a good portion of people in the beta now. So I don't know if they're just flagging people based on whether they beat Naxx Rammus or something, because it seems there's a high proportion of people that beat Naxx Rammus and got in, but it could just be like my weird sample bias there.
Yeah. But, a lot of people got it, so
there's a lot of people. I mean, I saw on your stream you were saying like there were like 100 Rain people in beta.
Rain on the PvP server. There's like people from salad bakers and shit inside of the Rain one. Like it's a rise. Like there's people inside of the Rain. We just made the guild and then we're just like inviting people, because I mean, it basically the first people who make an established guild on the beta and invite people and have people who want to do dungeon groups, like that's the guild to be in, right? Because people aren't going.
That's why
like,
Tetsu's in apes on the PvP server. Yeah.
Right? Wait, is he on the PvP?
He was on the PvP. I think he's gone to the PvE now to test stuff.
Yeah. It's oh man, yeah. It's I just think it's a smart idea, because now I've been able to talk to some people that I haven't been able to talk to before by just seeing them online. So yeah, Rain has like 100 people in there. It's pretty cool.
But yeah, I mean, that is anything else you want to talk about this week before we wrap up?
The Diablo 2 Resurrect.
Do you guys have mobile phones?
Oh, no. You guys have phones, right? Yeah, but Diablo 2 Resurrected, just like the alpha just came out, and so
Alrighty then. But yes, yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. This has been
Yeah.
episode six. Episode six of Prepared. Your weekly TBC breakdown. We'll see you guys next week. Take care. Thanks for listening.